Okay, hello and welcome back to Zoink TV. I'm Andrew Weir, and this is just the same speed art that I've uploaded previously. If you want to check that out, it's a lot faster, and it doesn't have my commentary. So this is the commentary of the same speed art, but slower. So the actual video is like 37 minutes long, so I'm going to be talking out throughout that. I'm going to talk about a few random things, and I'm also going to talk about what I'm doing on the screen. So at the moment, nothing too advanced. Hopefully, I'm just using some proportional editing just to move it around. And this is the start of the scene, which we just saw at the start. And basically, this is like a ledge, although it doesn't look like that in the end scene. I wanted this ledge to be close to the screen, like we're looking off a cliff or something. But it didn't matter that it doesn't actually look at that because there's no blur or anything like that, which would mean that it's closer. So what works out in the end scene, uh, it actually worked in the end. So whatever I made, if it was another side of a cliff, it would look pretty much the same. And basically, I'm just doing a few renderings now. Just I figure I'd get the light a little bit right. So because as I work this out with the camera angle, I like to work it from the camera. So I don't create full scenes. If things are going behind objects, I'm obviously not going to create that scene, so I can change the angle. If we looked at this from the side view, it'll probably look like nothing much at all. So it's definitely all made for the view. I'm now working on my first rocks. I didn't really think about how I was going to make it, so I just randomly extruded here and changed the size of things. But I've made some crystals in a similar scene, which is on my DeviantArt. And that's kind of where I thought of this kind of crystal rock thing. It's not really crystals, but it's as if there were loads of crystals, but in a rock shape. And I'm just extruding upwards, and I'm extruding the top a little bit, so it's not really flat and boring. And I'm just making a few of them. But the next time that I do it, I use proportional editing a lot, and also I work out from one plane or a cube, and I just extrude up from that. So that's a much better way of doing it. So this first one's kind of like, if I learned from the crystal scene, I'd just make one or two that are like smaller or they're not going to be the main focus. And then I get one like this that I'm starting on here, using some randomized proportional editing to make it more random. I would then extrude upwards, and then when I actually want to change this, it's going to look a lot better. And this is going to be like my main focus of the scene, or it's going to be the main rocks rather than the other rocks I just made. So I'm making sure when I extrude these upwards that I'm not having any of them connected, because I obviously want them all to be their own individual towers. And so I didn't actually do that with the first middle one that I extruded, so I changed that a little bit. Just rotating, it's all on smooth, scaling up so it kind of gets an outwards action. Moving it around however I wanted. Turning proportional editing off with O, which is the shortcut, but it's pretty basic. Moving them outwards so that they're not all connected or touching each other on the display anyway. And then obviously at the moment it's way too square on the outer edges. So when I finish fixing the faces here, I extrude, or later on I extrude some of the side parts to make it like a little bit more random, not just a cube of rocks. So I would talk about a few more random things while I work on this stuff. And one of them is that I might not be uploading very much past this video. If I upload any more videos, it'll be within the next 2 weeks, because after that I'm going to be going to university, so I'm not going to have time, or I'm not going to have a computer to make videos from. So that's just I will be making videos, and if I do make videos, they'll be a high quality. But there'll be a big gap where I don't make any videos. Yep, I'm extruding the side now, moving them out and making them look how I wanted. And I wasn't working on this scene for very long, so when I finished the main scene, I only had a few clusters of rocks, but I'd obviously suggest more if you have the time. But I think I knew I was recording this video, so uploading loads of long videos is quite time consuming. So this cluster of rocks is almost done, and I'm going to just repeat it throughout the rest of the scene. And I know where the floor is, so I know where I want it to be from the camera angle. I want it to be along the side. And then from that point, I've got a few bigger ones like that one, which is going to make sure that you can't see the rest of the scene from the right hand side, blocking out the view so that it's not all just the sea, which is going to be made behind the floor. And at the moment the scene's very big, so I'm moving the clipping upwards just while I make the scene a little bit, and then once I've got a scene that I like, I'll just scale it right down, because you can make the scene whatever size you want. I just decided to make it really big because I wanted the floor and the thing to all go together. So it worked better making it really big at first and then scaling it down. But now I've started on the floor, so I've just added a few ring loops, and I tried to proportional edit this, but I forgot that what I really need is just a single line to make that go down. So yeah, I try a few things there, but then I make a quick line here, I press J to join them, and then I move it down, which is good. So that looks okay. And obviously it's going to be subdivided again, and it's also going to be triangulated, so nothing here is that permanent at the moment. And then I've just used S, Z, and minus to make it completely flat on the Z-axis, because if you press minus, it's going to scale it all until the center point, and if you press a specific direction, then it's going to scale it all in that direction. So that's good. A little trick that I use a few times here as well. Now I'm moving the scene around a little bit, getting on the floor, and thinking about how I want this to look, because I didn't actually make a concept from this. I knew what I wanted the scene to look like, and it's not really an advanced scene, so without concept it's pretty easy. And I'm rendering it again to see what that looks like, get the positioning right when it looks a little bit more detailed. And there I've added the subdivision, but obviously my cliff isn't looking very good, so I'm going to do some edge splitting to make it a sharp cliff, which is what I want. And then after that, I'm still just tweaking the whole scene. So now I'm flattening that again to make sure it's a proper cliff. Bringing a few more up, bring them above so it's not completely flat. So obviously I kind of want a little bit of a little ramp off the cliff, a little bit more randomness in the heights, so that they're not just all the same height, which wouldn't look as good. Moving around to, and I'm selecting the middle bit here where I'm going to move that inwards, because I want the cliff to have, again, just like an edge to it, which is then going to go inwards and is going to make it, I tried proportional editing here, but it probably didn't do very much. But it goes inwards, and that just makes it look like it's actually curved, as you can see. So here I go with the edge split. I just need to add sharp edges to make sure that it splits the right place. And I'm not going much, I didn't go much further than that because I knew I was going to delete the rest of the square here, because all of it's outside the camera, so I didn't really want it to be in the scene. Moving around this a little bit because I didn't want it to be too in the way, which is why it's quite low down. And it looks like a ledge in the camera view at the moment, because without the colours. I think that when I actually add the colours, the ledge part kind of blends with the rest of it, maybe making it look a little bit more like it's the other side of the mountain. That could be just like right next to the water and lower down. But I don't know what other people think about that. But either way, again, it does look okay, as in the floor doesn't look like it's out of place, in my opinion anyway. So now I'm making another cluster of rocks because this one could be less advanced than the rest of than my main one, but it's also going to be a lot better than my not so good one, which was my first one. So I'm doing the same technique I did with the second one, adding a few ring loops in the middle in a second just to make sure that they curve nicer. And then this one is actually going to be mostly down at the water, so I just made sure that the actual bottom of the rocks were slanted upwards, and that will just make sure that it's gonna, when I move it downwards towards the water, I'm gonna have to move it around a lot to maybe make it look a little bit more different. But since it's slanted, it's definitely going to fit well to start off with, and then I can get into a little bit more editing, just a tiny bit. So again, extruding a few out of the edges, not so much as I did with the other one, but just making it look a little bit more random. And I know that this one's going to be facing on the different, not from the other side. I'm not going to be turning it around. So I know that they're only going to see one side, so I made sure that it was good from the right side, definitely. But again, if you focus on both sides, it's going to be good as well. So I'm just putting them down at the water like there, because I didn't want that area to be so blank, like the grass area was a bit blank. And then this one I pull right out with proportional editing, so that it looks like it's a bit more stretched than the rest and pulled back up into the earth or whatever. I kind of want to line the whole outside of the cliff with that, but I decided that that wouldn't look that good. With maybe one or two more would have looked better, but I think that one looks pretty good, and I wanted to make sure that they were in the view and they weren't blocked by the ledge. And now I'll make sure that it looks like it's going out into the sea. So this is obviously a lake that's leading into the sea, and it gets wider as we get there. So that's kind of what I was looking for. And now this is actually the start of the sea. I knew that I wanted the actual river part to be squashed and the sea part to be a lot bigger. So if you look back at the main photo, the link's in the description for that, to my DeviantArt, then you can see that the sea is obviously less stretched, or less squashed even, because my idea was that if we had a big stream of the water that I've made, the whole thing would be squashed and you can see which way the water is flowing. So if it's turning a corner, the whole thing's going to be squashed to look like it's bending around the corner. And then when we reach the sea, there's no corners, so the whole area is just going to be bigger, and the whole squashed thing wouldn't work at all. So that's kind of my idea with that. I've done a few low poly scenes before, so I kind of just wanted to practice it, because I figured the more low poly scenes that I make that are really crazy, like this, the rocks aren't exactly very realistic. So if I'm making crazy scenes like that, or maybe not so crazy, but if I'm making more fantasy scenes, then obviously if I need to make fantasy scenes, I can make them a lot easier with a little bit of experience. So I think I might get a little bit more crazy in the future when I'm making these scenes to like definite fantasy rather than just slightly cartoon scenes. Like this is more of a cartoon scene. So I think I'll make more in the future anyway. I'm just making sure that the sea fits the camera. I know that I'm going to be having this part in the camera, and then the rest of it, as I say, is going to be squashed right down. So I start messing around with that in a second, and now using proportional editing, I'm just getting the waves or the layers in, hiding that so it doesn't affect the rest, and then randomizing it, pulling it upwards to give it a little bit more choppy. And the water is a little bit too choppy, as some people have pointed out, because the weather is clear, so the waves are probably not going to be as crazy as I made them. But I did want crazy waves in the background because I didn't really know how to end the image. So going further back, I could have just made more land, or I could have made too much sea in the background going too far back. So I just kind of made it a little bit more bumpy, and then I made another layer behind that, and then I just ended it straight off, which I guess I would have done anyway, but if it was completely smooth, I don't think it would have looked quite as good, in my opinion. And now I've messed this part up because the actual the water has been unsubdivided, or decimated it's called, and this part has as well, but because it's not as complicated, it's just gone completely flat. So I'm messing around with this a little bit, trying to fix this, but then I kind of find out that it's not really fixable very easily. So I end up separating the whole thing soon, or separating the two parts, and that means that I can just edit it separately, bring it around separately like this. Although this isn't separate at the moment, the other part's just hidden. And eventually I make it into a different object. So you can see now that this part is really squashed rectangles, which do show maybe more speed in my, well, what I was going for anyway. Just showing that I'm thinking about the scene more than just doing it randomly. Now I'm randomizing it just to obviously make the water a little bit less ordered. And then when I triangulate it, it doesn't look that bad. Or it's randomly pulled together, so it kind of looks a little bit better than it did when it's completely all the same shape. And I have a long time messing around with the grid fill here because I count along how many it's going, but I don't really know how the limit of the grid fill works, so I kind of mess around with that for a little bit. But grid fill, if you type Control F for your face options, then you can find grid fill in there, and you can see what I do here. I make sure that I have enough ring loops added in to fill in the gap between these numbers here, and then I give in the grid fill after I've filled in a few myself manually, which grid fill can do itself if I worked it out. Then I use grid fill, and you can see that it just fills it in straight away. So I select it somewhere here. And grid fill is new to 2.68, so if you don't know about that, there's a few more features that you probably want to find out, but grid fill's one of the main ones, so it's just really useful. Okay, so this is the part with grid fill. Select 4 on each side, and then Control F for grid fill. And there it goes, just filling the whole thing pretty easily rather than face by face. So at this point I've pretty much got the full scene. We can see the sea in the background, the cliff, the rocks, and then the lake or river leading into the sea. So when I render it again, I'm just looking at what areas need more stuff. Obviously the middle area is missing stuff, and as I said, I didn't concept this, but I did imagine a lighthouse, which I did make, but I haven't shown it in this video. I made a lighthouse for the edge of the water, but it was way too tall, and there was no proper size which would make it look good, or it didn't look very good in my opinion. So I got rid of the lighthouse and I made a really quick tree. And the tree is probably the worst part of the image because it's really basic. I knew I wanted to kind of, if I'd spent more time on it, I might have made it kind of more of a curved tree growing off the very end of the cliff, or I was considering adding more trees into the blank area, just about the place anyway, and maybe even bushes growing out the middle of the towers, or anything like that. So I didn't have the time to do that, so I just didn't do it. But I'm still happy with how it looks, and the tree is a bit random, but it's still good. And now I'm showing off my amazing Photoshop skills with a kind of like a sunset or a sun. But I'm terrible at Photoshop, so this is pretty much my limit. Making a little gradient image for the background. And then I'm gonna use, well, I shouldn't really be rendering it yet, but I'm rendering it, and I'm using a bit of post-processing to put it in the background, because I want to kind of see how the scene's going to look. I know I haven't done all the materials yet, but adding in the background image just shows what kind of colours it's going to be and so on. Or I just figured I'd just add it in, because it's quite an easy thing to add in. So I'm just, if you want to know these nodes, you can always pause it, but I'm just adding in an alpha over node. And to make sure that you get transparent, you've got to tick transparent over there on the right in the film section of the render settings. And that'll just make sure that you can put anything, an image or whatever, in the background, wherever the alpha area is. And that makes a small problem when we're actually putting transparent on the water. So I wasn't too sure, I didn't want the image showing through the water. So in the end I ended up just copying it and putting a dark material behind it, and that's kind of how that looked. I also have to mess around with it a lot because I don't know whether it's something to do with the normals seemed fine, but there were areas that appeared see-through, and I don't know why. But I fixed it, and now I'm going back to the mountain. I'm splitting off the extra little bit at the end because even though it's not in the view, it does make it look a little bit neater. And then applying it all, and it allows me to select all linked, which means I can add the green material. And I make them a little bit more advanced materials, although people complain saying like it's obviously just a diffuse material, but you don't really need much more than a diffuse material in one of these scenes. There's no point putting all these crazy, there's no point adding glossy and things to a material that doesn't need glossy, or whatever other nodes you can think of. So I just put half the materials are just diffuse because it looked okay. It doesn't really matter if people think you need more than that. So eventually after triangulating it, that's what I get around to. So now this top bit here is definitely split off the rest of it, and I'm just selecting it like this. Maybe I haven't split it off yet, but I should have used the edge split to, maybe I haven't applied the edge split yet, I can't remember why, but I end up selecting around the edge here, and this is what, oh yeah, I deleted the edge split by accident. So I'd need to select the edge anyway, and this is why I'm just mixing it, splitting it off like that. So now that's a separate object, I can apply my green material, and then I can I can press Ctrl I, select the rest of it, and get my my green grass material and my rock material. So my rock material is a different colour to the rest of it when it's on the cliff side, because I wanted that part to be a little bit different, and then I've got rocks on there anyway, and I had two different colours for the rocks, so it's really not an advanced scene, but I start messing around a little bit with the water, obviously I want it to look good, so I start messing around with transparent, and then I'm adding on mixed nodes, and I'm just testing which part looks better with the glossy. So I can add the glossy on a few different points, but I decide it's on a different one. And actually I think I'm going to add in the grass before I get around to that. So now I'm making 3 planes for the grass. I've done grass in another low poly scene, so I know how I want it to look, and it goes kind of from one basic grass, this is the most basic one, to 2 others that are like a little bit more advanced, to add in the variation. And then I start messing around with particle systems, and not working at all because I haven't done particle systems in a long time. So that wasn't very fun, but you'll see that I mess around with it, it's definitely not working. And then I apply them with some surface snapping, because I know I don't want that much anyway. Making the individual blades. And it's low poly, so I'm kind of making them a bit random. Scale them down. I completely forgot about the positioning of the points for the particle system, the spawn points. So I mess around with this quite a lot, and then I decide to just put them on individually. To move the spawn point, I just use the Shift Control Alt C, which is going to move the origin to center. I'll move the origin to 3D cursor and so on, and that'll just move it right down, which is a good little trick. So now they're definitely all starting from that point, and you can see that it's not working. So I try and add them individually, I think. As in, I try and add individual hairs, I try vertex groups, I try changing the rotation, and it's not working. So if you've used particle systems recently, you might want to tell me what's gone wrong here, because I haven't used them since doing hair on a human. So I don't know whether it's different for a shape like this, but apparently so. And that's the crazy hair going everywhere. So definitely wrong. And since I gave up on that, I decided that I'd make a few different random groups of the grass. So I duplicate them, I move them around separately, make little groups of them. I'm going to split into 3 and then rotate them outwards like they're a little bit of a cluster of grass, just make it a little bit more ordered. And then also make it random as well, because I've got a few more variations of positions. And then I get around to the object surface snapping. So 3 clusters, 3 random blades of grass, and now I'm moving them downwards, getting the positions right on the camera, and then I'm turning on surface snapping. So I'm just putting a few random ones down that I want in good positions, and now the surface snapping's on. I start doing it from the top view, moving them around, because if you're working from the top view or any other view, it's going to snap exactly to where it looks like it's on. So when I'm duplicating these and rotating it around, make it a little bit more random, and then they're directly stuck to it. There might be one or two that don't get stuck to it when you're making particles like this, so it's not really, I shouldn't say particles because I'm not using a particle system, but when I'm doing the equivalent of a particle system, this is kind of the best way I could think of doing it. Messing around, getting the settings right, and then once I think I've got it right, I start duplicating and rotating and scaling. And now that I've got a few random ones in there, I want to see how the light was looking on them. I start duplicating clusters of them once they get a little bit more dense, because that just speeds up the process than obviously doing it individually. Just changing a few things there, adding materials and so on. Because obviously if I've duplicated too many before I start adding materials, then I've got a whole problem of adding materials to every shape. So I probably just should have searched what was wrong with the particle system, but because I was recording the screen, I decided to do this. And now it kind of looks, well, it doesn't look very good. I mean, it looks how I want it to look, but it's a lot slower than particle systems, so working it out, moving them around, and then having to delete all these ones that are off the edges, just took a little more time than it should have. And now that I've pretty much done that, I move on to the rest of the materials. Again, most of the materials are made to look a little bit more advanced with some post-processing. So I've actually, changed the colours, the colour balance node, and so on, to make it look a lot better. But as you can see, this is just diffuse, basic diffuse. At the moment it appears white because the light is white and the rock's grey. But when I post-process it, I make it look yellow like a sunset, and the background's yellow, so like a sun is actually shining on this stuff. And then just using some ambient occlusion to make the scene look brighter and the shadows look dark as well, or at least just change the whole scene around with how bright it is and so on. I'm not too sure what ambient occlusion is, but I know what it does, or at least I think I do. And then soon I should be messing around with the water material. Yeah, now that I've brought back down this, I should be looking at the water. So this is my most advanced material in the scene, and it was a lot of messing around, as I mentioned quite a bit earlier. I start to, well, separated it so that the rendering's faster, and I'm making sure that I've got diffuse and transparent, which is the colour and transparency. Then I want glossy, which is going to add in the gloss, obviously, and the shine from the light. So that's where that is. You can see that this doesn't look too bad at the moment, but I want it to be a little bit more advanced. And so I wanted it to be, I didn't want it to shine from different random angles, so I added in the facing to make sure that it was, all the ones facing away were pure blue, or the blue transparent in this case. And then the rest is glossy, but with that I also needed the blue transparent to be with the glossy. So I started messing around with that a little bit more, which you can see here. And I was considering even adding an emission, a blue emission, to make it look like a proper blue, strong blue. but I didn't do that, so I was still messing around, and I had to check out the full scene to see how the rest of the water was reacting and looking. And we can see that the river is way too shiny at the moment, so I start messing around with this a little bit more, and you can see that I managed to get it looking quite nice at one point, but I still mess around with it to see if I can get any better, because the whole left side is just shiny, so I try and fix that a little bit. Another way that I could have fixed it is actually just moving parts of the river higher than they are, so they're not all even and all reflecting the same part. And a render shows how transparent it is, so I rendered it up there, and it showed that I need just a little bit of material underneath to make it so that it doesn't show off the rest of it. You see in the background there, the whole sea has a bit of the background showing through. So just a few minor changes going on, and that pretty much brings it to the end of this speed art. So I hope you like the final image. I hope you found this video with commentary at least a little bit entertaining and useful. This is the first one of these videos that I've made. It's kind of a little bit tricky to talk over what you've already done. I did this yesterday and I can't remember half of the stuff that I did, so maybe next time I'll do it straight away or whatever. Depends what kind of time I have. And also it'll be from university, so if you don't see another video in a long time, it's just because I haven't got a computer or anything to make it on, and I'm going to have to do it outside in my university room or whatever. So, I thank everyone for watching, I thank everyone for subscribing, and I hope to see you in the next video. And speaking of this kind of video, I just want to quickly mention that you can check out more videos like this from Master Xeon, who gave me the idea. He's helped me a lot with low poly as well as character creation, so I'll put his link in the description as well. Just, guide you towards somebody else. So this is the final render, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.